So what happens if you have an extended presentation? So if you're doing a 3-hour presentation, half-day presentation, if you're doing a 7-hour, a full day, if you're speaking for a full day, how many slides do you need in that type of presentation? Well, when you understand the concepts that we've talked about in the short presentation, those short tips that or the short talk tips that I gave you a few minutes ago, then a longer presentation is actually pretty easy. So basically, to design a slideshow for a really, really good, well-written presentation, the easy thing to do is to just combine a series of shorter presentations. So basically, if you design a 120-minute presentation PowerPoint slideshow, the easy way to do that is to start by creating 2 separate 60-minute presentations and then just insert a short break. So basically 5 to 7 slides for the first hour, take a break, come back, 5 to 7 slides for the second hour. So I'll give you a really practical example of this. When I created the 2-day Fearless Presentations class, kind of talk about that a lot on the podcast. But when I started teaching that class, or when I created the first instance anyway of the class, I didn't set out to create 2 days of content. In fact, it was the exact opposite. I started out with an outline of what the most important items would be, just like I suggested that you do if you just have a 15-minute presentation. So the list that I created, by the way, I mean, I still remember it. It was, even though it was 20 plus years ago when I created the first iteration, but the very first thing was how to reduce public speaking fear. The second one was how to design short, kind of impromptu speeches. That's something that kind of terrifies a lot of people. The third thing was how to create a presentation that is easier to deliver, because if you create a great presentation, it's going to help you reduce public speaking fear. The fourth one was how to add energy and enthusiasm, because that's something that's really important to it, especially as the presentations get longer. And then finally, what the fifth thing was ways to add impact and interactivity to the presentation, the really elite type of things that great speakers do. And if I wanted to, by the way, since there's only 5 bullet points there, so I could deliver the entire content of that speech in an hour-long keynote, or even a 30-minute presentation. I could do that. And all I would need to do is talk about each one of those bullet points individually, and then just give an example or some type of evidence to prove that each one of those bullet points are true. However, if I wanted to turn that list into a 2-day seminar, that's actually pretty easy as well. So basically what I would do is I would start with that very first point, which is how to reduce public speaking fear. And this now becomes the topic of a new 1-hour presentation. So basically I've got that as my title instead of a bullet point. And now that bullet point becomes a title. And now I come up with 5 key things that will help people reduce public speaking fear. And I could speak for an entire hour about that thing, right? So basically that's the technique. It's a technique that I call terracing. You start with the key concepts that are in your original presentation and then go down a level. Basically for each one of those bullet points, you make a new title out of that. It becomes a whole new presentation, it becomes a whole new speech that you're designing. And now when you do it this way, every single thing that you're covering in a half-day workshop or a 2-day workshop or however long it is that you're speaking still is pretty important to the overall theme of the workshop. So basically everything is kind of really covered. So basically, you know, that if I were to do that again with the second most important concept, I'd spend an hour or 2 on that. And then third most important concept, an hour or 2 on that. So basically it makes it to where the entire speech, the entire workshop is really centered around that one major thing. So basically the entire 2-day class is really just a collection of 5 shorter presentations. So in my entire slide deck that I use for my 2-day public speaking class, there's only about 30 slides really in the entire 2 full days of content. And that includes things like summaries and stuff like that, you know. So basically it's not a whole lot of slides. It's more speaking. It's more of the presenter presenting the concepts, not creating a series of thousands of different slides to cover in the slide deck. And I would suggest that you kind of do the same thing. Keep make your presentation, your slides, your PowerPoint slideshow, make it a visual aid for your audience, make it to where they can understand your concept a whole lot better as you're presenting, and you're going to do really, really well.